What's going on, YouTube? OCD for EDC here, and what I got for your face balls today is the SOG Terminus, or I guess Terminus XR. Sorry. So this here happens to be the most premium of SOG Terminus. This one is in the carbon fiber scales with cryo-treated S35 VN. And as far as I know, this is the top of the line Terminus XR that they offer. Real quick, let's get into a few size comparisons. So here it is with the Benchmade bug out. And here it is with the Spyderco Para 3. I got a little bigger knife here. The Manix 2 St. Nick's variant. And a little smaller knife in the Damn Designs Dejin, or Jin. I'm not sure how you pronounce it, but basically it's the Oni with the drop point blade. So you can see here, the Terminus XR definitely is a good EDC size knife. It's a little bit on the small side for me, but I like carrying a little bit larger knives. However, size on this one wasn't my only issue, but we're going to get into that. So, right off the bat here, we'll go over the dimensions on this thing. So, you got an overall length of 7.15 inches. Got a handle length, including the pocket clip, of 4.21 inches. The pocket clip, out here, it sticks up a little over a tenth of an inch down there. But we'll talk about that as well. Blade length is just under 3 inches at 2.94. Handle thickness is 474 thousandths. You got a blade stock thickness that's relatively thin at 106 thousandths. However, the full, or not full, but the high flat grind on here is not terribly aggressive, and this knife is very consistent, but it's 25 thousandths behind the edge. So nothing to really write home about there on the, quote unquote sliciness of the blade. I didn't do a tremendous amount of cutting with this, so as far as the heat treat on this S35VN, it didn't stick out to me as being terrible, and I can't speak to how amazing it is. It could be great, and my guess is these are large batch knives. It's probably just kind of middle of the road as far as the heat treat and edge retention, but it's S35VN. I have no doubts that it truly is S35VN. So, it's certainly a premium steel. And at this price point, this knife sells for right at $85 when you can find it. And they do make this in a cheaper version that has G10. I know they make it in a red and a green. I think there's a blue one as well. And the G10 versions have D2 blades, and those are like right around $55. So this has, I guess kind of SOG's, they call it the XR lock, but it's like SOG's version of an access lock, and it works fine. It does have a little bit of lock stick, and the weird or goofy thing about it, and you can see this better in my disassembly video, which I'll link. I'll probably link it up in this area. But if you want to check out the disassembly on this knife, the weird thing about this, let me grab this bug out again. So with the Benchmade access lock, the lock bar is one solid piece. And for example, on this bug out, this is titanium. It's a black coated titanium. And, it's just milled out of one solid piece. And then you have a spring on either side, the Omega springs, that, are constantly trying to push the lock bar that direction. And so, it has a very solid feel to it as you actuate the lock. And, access lock knives have been around for quite some time. Tons of people are doing them today. Hogue also does a pretty good example. I think they call it the able lock. But in the case of SOG, the one thing that all the others have in common is that lock bar is one solid piece. SOG took a different approach, and they've got these two plastic pieces. And actually, before I go there, even on the Manix 2 that uses the same, although the mechanism inside is a little bit different, the way that you actuate it is the same. And even this is one solid piece, where I think they call this the ball bearing lock. But the part that you're touching on either side, that's one solid piece all the way through there. Actually, I'll link the video that shows that as well, because I have a video of replacing that ball cage, and you can see the part in there and see that it's one solid piece. On the SOG knife, they have a metal bar that runs across, and then these two plastic pieces, so it's three pieces that make up this assembly, plus two springs, instead of it being, one bar that runs all the way across with two springs. And what you get from that is, if I can show this off without disassembling it, if I move my fingers side to side, you see that bar sliding back and forth? That gives it a feeling that is just not nearly as solid or as quality. The plastic on plastic sliding right here is, I don't know, it just doesn't feel as good. It's just not as solid. And although I think the lock works fine in practice, yeah, I just don't like it as much. So this has two main methods of deployment. You have the thumb stud, which works great. The geometry on it's really good. Blade just rockets right out. And then you also have the flipper tab, which also works well. And this knife, personally, I think it could probably benefit from cutting the flipper off. You do a flipper delete on this, and then, make it more just like a bug out, where you just have the thumb stud deployment. Personally, I think I would like it a little better like that. It would give it a little nicer look, and the flipper tab's quite large for how small the knife is. But the flipper does work well. It does have some jimping on it. It is angled nicely. It's comfortable to flip, and it, like I said, does function well. But you can also pull the lock back and then swing the knife out like that. It's not nearly as nice to do as it is on the Benchmade knives. And there's a good reason for that, because you can see here that because of the flipper, there's a track cut in the blade where that lock bar has to slide in there. And so when you pull the lock bar back, you can see the blade comes out just a bit. And it just makes for kind of a goofy setup, where on the Benchmade, when you pull the lock bar back, the knife doesn't shoot out like that, and the blade is just basically free from the lock bar. So the lock bar doesn't interface with the blade at all once the lock bar is pulled back. So just a little bit different implementation, but the overall mechanics of the lock, the way it interfaces with the blade, is still the same. So because of that, the knife just, I don't know, I don't necessarily really dislike it. It just doesn't feel as good. And so, Hogue with their Able Lock, the new Real Steel Field Bro, that knife feels really great, feels just like a Benchmade. And then there's several other ones, copies of Access Locks and stuff, that other companies have done, and they all pretty much feel the same. Unless you're talking about a knife that's just really poorly made. But this knife here, I don't know, it just has a different feel. Otherwise, the one other thing that really kind of drove me nuts about this knife was the pocket clip. And it's kind of a bummer, because the pocket clip was something that I was pretty pumped on. I thought the pocket clip was going to be really great. It looks good. I knew it was going to go in pocket really well. I thought it would come out of your pocket well also, and it doesn't. And I'm going to show you why it doesn't here in just a second. But, generally fold over steel clips are great. This one is good in hand. Not too many issues there. It's not really a hot spot. You've got kind of this forward area where you can grab on the front of that flipper tab. That works well. Choking back, got a little bit of jimping up on top. That works well. It's comfortable. I mean, it's a 3-finger knife for me, but it still works well. No issues. However, when I started, and I carried this for a couple of days, going in the pocket, no issues at all, works great. And as you can see there, it is a full, more than full deep carry. That part's great. I could have done without the SOG writing, but I don't even really care about that so much. The problem is where this clip loops over like this, and this is adjustable. You can flip it for right or left tip up carry. And so you pull the clip out and flip the knife around and stick it back in, because you can see there it goes between the backspacer and the scale, or I'm sorry, and the liner. The problem is your pants material. Let me show you here. I'm going to demonstrate this with this little microfiber cloth. When this is in your pocket, you do have a full deep carry, which is amazing. Well, your pants material ends up coming up over the end of the knife like this, which, I guess is great if you want to not look like you're carrying a knife, although this thing says SOG on it. So, if anybody knows what SOG is, people are going to know that it's some type of a bladed tool anyway. But when you go to pull this thing out of your pocket, the hem on your pants, or at least on my pants, gets caught right here because it's folded over the end of the knife and it gets caught. And so you're pulling, well, just like right now. I can't pull it off of this rag. Well, there it came out. But there's times where I had to use both hands and like straighten the top of my pocket out to make it vertical to slide the knife out. And that was really frustrating. So what I thought was going to be good just by looking at it ended up not being good at all in practice. You compare that to the clip on the bug out, it's not as deep carry, but it just goes in and out of the pocket and works fantastic. No issues at all with the deep carry clip on the bug out, or lots of others. This Reich Thule, it's a great clip. I would have liked it had they recessed the screws, but can't have everything. So on the Real Steel Rocket, here's one that the clip goes in between the backspacer and the liner. Same way. The difference is that there's not enough room for your pants to fold up over the end of the knife. So this clip also works extremely well. And this loop over design right here, there's just too much space in there. And so if I were going to keep this knife, I would flatten that out, literally just, bend that down and kind of reshape the end of this, because it truly is a pain in the ass to get this thing out of your pocket. Short of that, it's just a standard kind of a decent pocket knife. It's nothing amazing, nothing terrible. Really just the two issues with the lock bar and the clip are really my only two issues. The flipper delete, I think, really that's more aesthetic, as well as it's not terribly sharp on the jimping, but, it is a little bit sharp in your pocket, and it is kind of a bigger flipper tab. But again, I'm kind of nitpicking there. But the clip, certainly they need to do a little work on that and redesign this. And I wish they would go to a lock bar that was one solid piece, because this scenario right here, and you can even hear it. Listen to this. That's the plastic lock buttons rubbing up against that carbon fiber, and it just feels cheap. And they're going for a premium knife. Now, maybe that feels a little different on the G10 model. I'm not sure, because I haven't handled one of those. But I really had high hopes for this knife. Being $85 with S35VN, with carbon fiber, it just, I don't know. It just doesn't quite hit the mark for me. And the other thing is, on the scales, they put these milled lines in there to kind of class it up a bit. but the carbon fiber is otherwise polished, and it really just kind of has that cheap carbon fiber feel, like of a Ganzo or something. I mean, I do believe that it is real carbon fiber. It certainly looks like it, and where these chamfers are, you can see the layers in there. So I do believe that it really is carbon fiber. It's not like a sticker or anything. I just feel like the way they finished it um, just makes it look kind of cheap and cheesy. Uh, it just doesn't have a really nice carbon fiber feel to it. Like, well, not that this is the same kind of carbon, but the Blackow has, really really nice marble carbon fiber, and it feels good. It's finished well. The SOG just doesn't really have that. So overall, I think it's a fine EDC tool. For people that like, 4-inch handle, 3-inch blade size knives, between that 7 and 7.5 inch. I think it's great. People are probably going to like it just fine. But, you know, the lock it just doesn't give you a really good feeling. Um, and the look of it, it's just kind of plain Jane. It's a pretty neutral grip, which makes it fine in hand. No real ergonomic issues, but otherwise it's just kind of, I don't know, just kind of unremarkable all the way around. And because of the lock and because of the clip, I'm just kind of indifferent on it. So anyway, like I said, if you want to see more about this lock and check it out internally, I did a really thorough disassembly of this knife, and I talk about the geometry. I also talk about the why it's crooked. So if you want to check that out, you can definitely do that. And I'll put the link up in the description, as well as I'll put a card up here somewhere that will have a link to that video in it. So anyway, guys, hope you enjoyed that. That was my thoughts and review of the SOG Terminus XR in S35VN. Thanks, and we'll catch you next time.